understand why it's called a honeymoon. Mom never lets anyone call her honey. And they're not going to the moon. They're just driving to the Champlain Islands for 2 nights. But I wish they actually would go all the way to the moon and stay a while. Because as soon as they get back, Mom and I have to tape up our last boxes and leave the condo so we can move into a new house with enough space to blend. I don't like sharing. Not one bit. And even though I don't have to share a bedroom in the new house, I have to share all the other rooms. It's bad enough already because Bryce has my same birthday, and every year they make an announcement over the loudspeaker at school. And a very happy birthday to B. Embers and Bryce Valentine. And in 4th grade, when kids found out my mom was dating his dad, they started calling us the twins. But I'll tell you one thing. I'm exactly 6 hours older than Bryce Valentine, and I am not sharing any blended birthday parties with him. Ever. When I wake up, I can hear Grandma B in our kitchen, and I hope she's making pancakes. Hers are the best. Plus, whenever Mom is gone and Grandma sleeps over, she adds M&Ms to my breakfast because she knows they're my favorite. And she gives me a wink like this is something we don't have to tell Mom. And I nod and smile because even though I'm not one for secrets, this is one I'll keep. I open my bedroom door and peek down the hall. Grandma's whisking batter at the counter. "Morning, Bee," she calls. "Morning," I say, and slide onto my stool. We only have 2 stools in the kitchen because we only need 2, and I like it that way. I still just wish Mom would. "Bee?" Grandma cuts me off fast and turns around with a dripping whisk. 3. I know I'm not getting around Grandma B's 3s this morning. No one ever does. My mom did them every morning growing up, reciting 3 things she was grateful for before Grandma let her get out of bed. And that's how Mom has always woken me up, too. "Good morning, Bee. What are your 3? "Big or small?" Grandma says. She pulls a pack of M&Ms from the pocket of her apron and gives me a little wink. 3 things. I take a deep breath and think about the yard sale Mom and I found last week. 1. Cleats that fit. 2. The soccer net for our new yard. And 3. M&Ms. Grandma B spreads a ladle of batter on the griddle, then looks me right in the eyes and says, "Those are good ones." And that's the thing about Grandma B's 3s. It's kind of like a timeout huddle. You might be down 2-0 with 1 minute left on the clock, but a good captain reminds you of what you do have, like the best speed on the field, a strong left foot, or a secret weapon flip throw-in when you get within striking distance of the goal. And Grandma's a good captain. She pours out 5 more pancakes and waves me over to drop in the M&Ms. I make my soccer number, 10, on each one, and Grandma grabs a spatula from the drawer. "Now, what were you saying about your mom?" And that's the other thing about Grandma. She's good at reminding me that I have a lot to be grateful for, but she still listens to what's making me feel cruddy. Even lucky kids go through hard stuff, she says. I still don't understand why we can't stay in the condo. Mom and Wendell could just keep visiting each other. My M&M 10s are getting all rainbow melty. The baby could stay with us, I guess, or we could switch at halftime when it turns 9 or something. Grandma chuckles a little and flips the pancakes. "I hear you," she says. "It'll be hard at first." She turns down the griddle and points her spatula at me. "But Wendell is good, and so are those boys." I want to tell her that she doesn't know Bryce and how he acts when he's around Kenny and Morris. But before I can, she says, "Your mom is happy." I roll my eyes, and Grandma rolls hers right along with me and says,
Oh, I know. It's total hogwash, and Wendell's ruining everything.
I smile. Exactly. She pulls out 2 plates and slides 3 pancakes on each, then puts the jug of maple syrup on the counter, pours 2 glasses of milk, and sits down across from me on the other stool.
Mmm.
She hums after the first bite.
I love when your mom is out of town.
That gets us both laughing, and Grandma's laughs are like Wendell's snorts. They're hard to stop once they get started. We blow bubbles in our cups and get enormous milk mustaches and eat with our fingers and talk with our mouths full. And when we're done, we leave the dishes in the sink, and Grandma pulls me into her apron.
If you ever get sick of those boys and need some elbow room, you know what to do.
I'm thinking she's going to say I can come visit her any time, but instead, she juts her elbow hard like she's sinking it into Bryce's ribs and says,
Take it.
Then she gives me a look that says, You got this. Grandma's phone rings, and she doesn't even say hello when she picks up, just,
You're not supposed to be worrying about anything, remember?
Then she pulls the phone away from her ear and mimics Mom blabbing. We snicker, and I'm thinking Mom will ask to talk to me, so I put my hand out for the phone and act like I'm annoyed even though I'm not, because I kind of miss her too. But Grandma says,
Okay, Louise, we will. Now go have fun.
She hangs up and says,
She wants us to go check on the boys. Make sure they're not running circles around their grandmother, who is way, way older than I am.
Grandma smiles and unties her apron and puts her hand on my shoulder.
Come on now, Bee. Let's go make sure Grandma Ethel is still kicking.
I'm feeling like a starter who's been benched, and going to check on whether the Valentine boys are playing fair is the very last thing I want to do. But then Grandma says,
We'll stop on the way home for ice cream, because we're going to need some dessert after that breakfast.
Like I said, Grandma Bee's a good captain. On the way to the Valentine's house, Grandma says,
Let's take a detour down your new road,
and turns right onto Evergreen. It's dirt, like most of the other roads in our town, but not like the condo that is walking distance from the village. The houses on Evergreen all have an upstairs and garages for 2 cars, and front and back and side yards with trees separating them onto their own land. Even though we only live 2 roads over, it doesn't feel anything like this. Our condo has 1 floor and 2 bedrooms, and we share a carport and a wall with Aunt Tam. We share a yard with her, too, and our back decks touch, so she can just step over to ours anytime, and she knows how to let herself in. And even though I'm not one for sharing, I don't mind sharing with Aunt Tam. We moved into the condo when I was 2 weeks old, so Mom and Tam have been friends my whole life. Mom likes to remind me that as a baby, I would cry and cry for what seemed like forever, like double overtime into penalty kicks, without quitting.
Always had that fire in you, she tells me. You're an embers, all right.
On our first night in the condo, I cried and nothing was working. So Mom wrapped me in a blanket and walked outside in the cold Vermont air until my cries turned to whimpers and humming snores that sent little white puffs to warm the space between us. And when I was sleeping like that, she tiptoed toward the back door and opened it to go inside. But I woke and cried, so she started over, walking the yard again, bouncing and shushing. Then the light next door turned on, and Tam shuffled out to the yard in her bathrobe and winter hat and big boots. Mom whispered she was so sorry and how embarrassing to meet our new neighbor this way. But Tam shushed my mom and put her arm around her shoulders and walked the yard with us. They took turns holding me and running inside to make hot chocolate, circling the yard while I slept. And when the sun came up, Aunt Tam pushed my blanket down below my eyes and said,
"Good morning, little bee. I'm your Aunt Tam."
Grandma slows to a stop in front of our new house, number 63. I look up the dirt driveway and along the bricks of the front walk and at the heavy wooden door. And it's weird to think I'll be sleeping in this house next week. And so will Wendell and Cameron and Tucker and Bryce and Dodger and Roscoe and Fred. And it's weird to think that Aunt Tam will be 2 streets away instead of just on the other side of my bedroom wall. Grandma nods toward the house across the road.
"You know your neighbors?"
I shake my head. Their garage is full of boxes, and a mattress leans against a car in the driveway. But what I'm really looking at is one of those practice nets in the yard that's regulation goal-sized and sends the ball bouncing back to you. Before Grandma starts driving slowly again, the front door swings open, and a girl I've never seen before comes bounding out with a soccer ball beneath her arm. She's wearing stretchy jean leggings and a button-down blousey shirt, and her brown, wavy hair is long and loose over her shoulders, and she's barefoot. I'm thinking she can't possibly have any kind of good touch on the ball dressed like that. Then she drops the ball on the lawn and starts striking it against the net and dead-trapping its return every time before striking again. Hard, with her left foot. I'm wondering if she's in 6th grade too, and if she can do a flip throw-in, and if she was the most valuable girl wherever she came from.
"Looks like there's another soccer star moving to Evergreen Road,"
Grandma says.
"Should we say hi? Feels like a good day to make a new friend."
Nah, I say. We better go save Grandma Ethel. Mom always says it's important to find friends who will walk with you through the cold night, even if you're walking in circles. But I'm not made of whispery, walky, hot chocolate hugs. I think I'm more like the icicles that hang from the eaves, strong and sharp, and fine on my own. I like Nell and Fern from my rec team, but we're not the hang outside of school kind of buddies. Plus, I do have one friend, and I don't need more than Maximilian. The girl strikes the ball hard again, and Grandma shrugs, and we drive off, down Evergreen and onto Maple. The Valentine house is a 5-minute drive from our condo, and I don't know why Mom and Wendell think that's not close enough. When we get there, Cameron is taping boxes together in the driveway, and Tucker is practicing his piano, which has been moved out to the garage already. They wave and smile and walk toward us when we drive up. Grandma B pulls them into a hug.
"We were just missing you and wanted to say hi."
Cameron kind of screws up his face, like, "Really?" And so do I, because we saw them yesterday. But Tucker smiles and gets all misty, and I swear he's going to snort like Wendell. Then Grandma pulls me into the hug, and I'm all squished in with them until she says,
"Okay, that feels better. Your brother inside?"
They nod. On the way to the house, Grandma leans in for an Embers girl's whisper.
"I do love those boys, but you can't tell a couple of teenagers you're coming to check on them."
I smile, and Ethel creaks the door open like she really is 100 years old.
"Oh, hello,"
she says.
Come in, come in."
I'm about to say we are just checking to make sure everyone is alive and we'll be on our way back to the condo now. But Grandma says okay, and before I know it, Ethel is inching through all the moving boxes and making tea and offering me a rice cake. I shake my head because rice cakes are dry and tasteless, and only 100-year-olds and Wendell like them. I see the little blue porcelain container on their kitchen windowsill, and I wonder where Wendell will keep that in our new house, and I'm hoping not on our kitchen windowsill, because that would feel a little weird and sad. I want to stop thinking about those rings inside, So I start looking for Bryce, and I know right where I'll find him, because Wendell said, clearly, twice,
No video games. If you want to hang out with your friends, hang out with them in real life.
I open the door to the basement and hear the sound of explosions. I'm right. I don't even have to go down to check, so I say, Grandma B, Bryce is playing video games.
And we had M&Ms for breakfast,
She says, and gives me that same wink, like this is our little secret. And I'm thinking, of course, Bryce gets away with everything. Little things, like extra screen time, and big things, too. 3. Principal Measley called it an innocent mistake. The truth is, Bryce deserved at least an in-school suspension on his record, but Measley just thumped him on the shoulder and said,
Boys can be careless, but I think he learned his lesson. Am I right?
Bryce grinned and nodded. I tried to tell Principal Measley that Bryce wouldn't learn any lesson, but he waved me off and said that when I'm 43 and looking back on Bryce Valentine spilling soap solution from science class down the hallway, I'll laugh. But I'll tell you one thing. Bryce didn't spill it. He poured it. And I won't laugh when I'm 43 or 99 or any other age. And I don't think Mr. Rinaldi and Ms. Long will either. The soap that Bryce poured in the hallway was one of the solutions we were using to test tension, that thing that happens at the surface of liquids where all the little molecules hold on to each other so tightly that bugs can creep across without falling through. Little water bugs like Bryce Valentine, who are held up by Measley even when I'm trying to splash around and teach him what it feels like to fall in. I'm pretty sure the soap in the hallway was meant for Maximilian, because it was smeared right outside of Ms. Miller's science lab before lunch, and Maximilian is always the first one in and the first one out, because he has to be 2 minutes early for everything. Plus, I saw Bryce and his 2 bonehead friends, Kenny and Morris, in the hallway, and they're always poking fun behind Maximilian's back. I was coming from the bathroom, and they were taking long sips from the water fountain and watching Ms. Miller's door. They scurried away fast when it wasn't Maximilian's sneaker that found the slippery solution. I told Principal Measley that Bryce, Kenny, and Morris were the only 3 to leave the science lab that period. But when Measley pulled them into the hallway, they all clung together like little molecules, shaking their heads and saying it must have been an accident. That Bryce was carrying a measuring cup, but he didn't mean to spill it. I reminded Measley that it's a rule that all science materials stay in the lab. But Bryce got off with an apology letter to both limping teachers, who slid and surfed down the hallway, hands circling, until they slammed into each other and fell in a heap. When I went home that day, I told Mom everything, and she said things like, I sure hope you're wrong, and Wendell will talk to Bryce. I told her I wasn't wrong, and that Bryce laughs along with Kenny and Morris when they make fun of Maximilian, and that Bryce will never get in trouble because Measley is no better than a creeping water bug. When I told Grandma, she said, they're still using the old boys will be boys hogwash. Then she put her arm around my shoulders and said, You'll just have to show Bryce on the soccer field tomorrow. And that's another reason why Grandma's a good captain. She reminds you there's more than one way to squash a water bug. I'm a good captain, too. Even if Wyatt Triggers was the actual captain of our rec team, everyone knows I ran that field. We won the rec soccer co-ed championship in 4th grade, and we would have won again in 5th grade, except we were playing against Bryce's team, the day after the soap in the hallway incident, when he should have been suspended and not playing at all in the first place. The referee must have lost his whistle because Bryce was offsides by 2 yards, and it cost us the game. Bryce knew it too, because when his teammates started cheering and lifting him up on their shoulders, he shot a glance at me like I probably was offsides, but the referee didn't see it, so ha. All the parents for our team were standing on the side where Bryce scored the game-winning goal, and all the parents for their team were at the other end, except for my mom and Wendell. They were standing together at the midline, like they couldn't pick sides, and were wishing we'd just tie in overtime. But when Bryce received the last pass, my mom jumped up and said,
"Offsides, ref! Come on!"
And for a minute, I thought maybe she and Wendell would get in a fight and break up so they could each go to their own kid's side, and we wouldn't ever have to have a wedding. After the game, Kenny and Morris waited until the ref and coaches turned their backs. Then they laughed at our goalie, spit on the 18-yard line, and linked arms with Bryce as they walked off the field. And I'll tell you one thing. Kenny and Morris are the biggest, sneakiest bullies in the grade, and Bryce is the biggest bully follower gets away with everythinger there ever was. After we huddled with our teams, and Kenny and Morris sauntered off, Bryce and I slung our bags over our shoulders and started walking to the sideline in the middle of the field, where Mom and Wendell stood waiting. "You were offsides," I said, "by a mile." "Was not." "Was too." "Was not." "Was too," I say, and shove my fingers in my ears so I can't hear his lying little voice. Mom pulled me into a hug and said,
"You played great, Bea. You can't win them all."
I looked at Bryce and was about to say, actually, I could win them all if everyone would play by the rules. But he was looking at the ground. He didn't even seem that happy that he won. He actually looked kind of sad, like he didn't win at all. And that got me thinking about more than just the offside goal and losing the championship. It got me thinking of the day Bryce and I turned 6 weeks old, the day Wendell met my mom, and the rings in the blue porcelain container. Then Bryce shook his head and sucked his teeth and said, "I wasn't offsides. Even the ref—" Wendell cut him off and said,
"It looked close from here, but it's just a game."
Wendell hates conflict. Mom and Wendell quick-kissed goodbye, and Bryce got in Wendell's car, and they drove off like it was no big deal that he just stole the whole championship. Mom and Wendell are home.